Imagine a woman standing at a crossroads where the choice isn't just between two men, but between two entirely different versions of herself. On one side, there is the life of Matilda Ann, or Tabby, as a member of the high society elite in Chile, surrounded by the predictable comforts of wealth and the attentions of the wealthy Count von Guntner. On the other side, there is a life of uncertainty, dust, and grueling physical labor alongside a man named Duncan, whom she calls Dinky Dunk. When a revolution in Chile wipes out her family's fortune, the safety net of her old life vanishes. Tabby doesn't choose the easy path of a kept woman or the lingering shadow of her former status. She chooses Duncan, and in doing so, she sets a course for the Canadian prairies, a landscape that will eventually reshape her soul. Arthur Stringer's The Prairie Wife is told through the intimate, evolving letters of Tabby. Because we see the world through her eyes, we don't just watch her life unfold, we feel the grit of the soil and the weight of the silence that comes with the vast, open plains. When Tabby and Duncan first arrive at the Stewart Ranch, the reality of their new life is a shock to the system. They aren't moving into a manor, they are moving into a primitive, patched-together shack. For a woman who has known the refinements of high society, this is a brutal transition. The shack is a 2x4 structure, little more than a shell against the elements. Here, Tabby ceases to be a socialite and becomes a shack owner's wife. The early days are defined by a desperate, rhythmic struggle for survival. It isn't just about finding food, it's about the sheer, exhausting labor of making a home out of nothing. Tabby finds an unexpected partner in Ollie, a silent, disfigured Swedish worker. Ollie doesn't say much, but his steady, efficient presence is the backbone of the ranch's physical survival. Together, through domestic labor and an incredible amount of emotional grit, Tabby and Ollie transform that rudimentary structure into something that feels like a home. But as the years pass, the struggle shifts from the physical to the psychological. This is where the book moves beyond a simple survival story and becomes a study of the human spirit. The prairie is a beautiful, spiritual expanse, but it is also a lethal, unpredictable force. There are weevils in the oatmeal, the constant threat of predators in the night, and the terrifying looming possibility of a prairie fire. One of the most intense moments in their early years is a massive fire that sweeps toward them, forcing Tabby and Duncan to fight for their lives with nothing but wet blankets and sheer willpower. It's a moment that cements their bond, proving they can face the chaos of the wilderness together. However, the greatest threat isn't the fire or the weather, it's the isolation. There is a specific fear that haunts women on the frontier, a concept the book explores deeply, the fear of withering. It's the idea that the crushing loneliness and the endless, repetitive nature of domestic work will cause a woman to go to seed, to lose her femininity, her intellect, and her sense of self. Tabby sees this happening to her neighbor, Mrs. Dixon, a woman who has been physically and mentally broken by the relentless demands of the land. To fight this, Tabby engages in a quiet, constant war for her own identity. She clings to small luxuries, a book, a piece of music, the ritual of tea, the effort of maintaining a sense of fashion despite the dust. She refuses to let the prairie strip her down to nothing but a laborer. She wants to remain a woman of culture, even if she has to carve that culture out of the dirt. As the ranch begins to stabilize, the world starts to leak into their isolated life. They are no longer just surviving, they are participating in the economy of the West. Duncan, ever the risk-taker, makes massive agricultural gambles, investing heavily in wheat and flax. These are high-stakes moves that could either secure their future or leave them destitute. During this period of growth, the social landscape of the ranch changes. They encounter Percival Benson Woodhouse, an aristocratic Englishman who arrives on the frontier looking for adventure. He is the polar opposite of Duncan. He is effete, delicate, and clearly unsuited for the ruggedness of the prairies. His presence brings a different kind of tension to the household, especially when he becomes mesmerized by Olga Saristo. Olga is a Finnish woman hired to help on the farm, and she is described as a Valkyrie. A powerful, physically imposing, and almost mythic figure who seems to embody the raw strength of the land itself. This influx of outsiders leads to one of the most misunderstood moments in the story. Duncan returns home unexpectedly to find Tabby and Percy together in the small, intimate shack. To an outsider, or to a man returning from a long journey, the scene looks scandalous, perhaps even adulterous. But the reality is much more grounded in the harsh necessity of frontier life. Percy has fallen critically ill, and Tabby has been nursing him back to health in the only shelter available. This moment highlights the shift in Tabby's character. She is no longer the sheltered girl from Chile. She is a woman of action, a caretaker, and a person who navigates the messy, complicated realities of human need without the constraints of social etiquette. As the years continue to roll by, the lean years finally give way to prosperity. The transition is marked by tangible signs of success, the birth of their son, Dinky Dunk Jr., and the arrival of a touring car. They have moved from the era of survival to the era of stability. The climax of their journey isn't a sudden explosion or a violent confrontation, but a victory of civic persistence. Duncan spends much of his energy fighting for land and water rights, a struggle that is essential for the long-term survival of any rancher. His success in this battle leads to the arrival of the railway through their property. This is the ultimate turning point. The railway is the herald of the modern world. It brings trade, people, and the end of their isolation. The book concludes with a sense of bittersweet triumph. The family is now prosperous enough to plan the construction of a large modern house, a far cry from the patched-together shack where they started. They have achieved everything they set out to do. They have built a home, a family, and a legacy. But as Tabby looks toward this new grand house, she feels a profound sense of nostalgia for the cramped, difficult, and intimate shack of their youth. There is a realization that by succeeding, they have invited the very thing they once fought to keep at bay, civilization. And the very progress that brings them comfort and wealth is the same force that will inevitably erase the rugged, isolated, and deeply personal life they shared in the early years. They have won, but in winning, they have lost the wilderness that once defined them. When we look at Tabby's journey, it's easy to see it as a classic rags to riches story, but it's much more complex than that. It's a story about the cost of stability. The tension in the book isn't just between humans, but between the desire for a refined, cultured life and the primal necessity of survival. Tabby's struggle to maintain her identity against the withering effect of the prairie is a struggle many can relate to, the effort to remain oneself when your environment is constantly trying to grind you down. The prairie itself acts as a character in this story. It is a dual force, presented as both a spiritual, life-giving expanse that offers a sense of infinite possibility and a lethal, unpredictable threat that can take everything away in a single afternoon. It is this duality that makes the setting so much more than just a backdrop. It is the crucible in which Tabby and Duncan are forged. In the end, The Prairie Wife leaves us with a quiet, thoughtful reflection on the nature of progress. We often think of moving from a shack to a house, or from isolation to connection, as an unalloyed good. But Stringer suggests that every step toward civilization is also a step away from a certain kind of raw, unmediated human experience. Tabby's story is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. But it's also a reminder that the things we work so hard to build often end up changing the very people who built them.